Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Chester County Historic Preservation Network's Fall Virtual Heritage Series, live at 5 on the third Thursday of each month through the end of 2021. In tonight's program, we will meet Jim Buxella, Vice President of CCHPN and a geologist whose professional career has focused on environmental consulting. A photographer, Jim volunteers time to the local Boy Scout troop, as well as to his historical and planning commissions. Jim's work as chairman of Bondsville Mill Park Committee leads us to this evening's presentation on the history of Bondsville Mill. Please extend a warm welcome to Jim Buxella.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Bondsville Mill. A somewhat remarkable textile mill, just for the sole reason that it operated for over 100 years during a key part of the Industrial Revolution. It operated from making textiles off and on from 1841 through 1954, and it went through multiple owners and through multiple booms and busts. So the image we have here on the screen is from approximately 1881. The blue buildings currently still exist, and the red buildings were replaced by subsequent owners going into the 20th century. This is a regional map showing the number of mills just along Beaver Creek. There were 10 mills between West Brandywine Township and Downingtown just on Beaver Creek, in a wide variety: textile, sawmills, grist mills, a creamery, paper mills. The point is that this was an area of industry, and the density of mills is remarkable. And this is just on Beaver Creek. And you have East Brandywine Creek and all the creeks in the area. So that really surprised me when I started to do research on Bondsville Mill. What's remarkable is that most of these mills along here are in ruins or barely recognizable as a mill site, whereas Bondsville Mill is still present, likely because it operated for such a long time. This is an image of the mill in 1880. This is the spinning room that they spun the yarn on the spindles for the looms. This is the mill building. The water came in through the back to power the mill. And it's the focus of our current rehabilitation efforts on the mill buildings of the park. This is a different angle from the southeast, looking at the same buildings. That was that long building, the mill building, and these are no longer present. So what's interesting is that even before it was a textile mill, this was a mill site from the middle of the 18th century. Jeremiah Pearsall constructed a grist mill there, and then Whitaker took it over in 1789, and it basically ground the grain from 1,000 acres of the farmland around the mill area. In 1841, Abraham Bond established the textile mill there. So that's when manufacture of textiles started there, and his main product was Kentucky jeans. He established the workers' housing, and in 1844, the mill burned, and he rebuilt it in 1847. What's interesting is he was just on the verge of getting insurance for the mill when it burned. he had about 9 looms that were burned and materials that were burned in that. It was known as the Bonds Factory, and his name is what gives Bondsville the name of the area and the mill. So this is a map of 1847, and you can see that's identified as Bonds Factory. This is Beaver Creek. This is Bondsville Road here. In 1848, William McFarland purchased the woolen factory at a sheriff's sale, and they were good years. In 1864, James Roberts took over, and he encompassed a lot of development in the mill, and made a lot of products, and was a big factor in developing it. He was the millwright for McFarland before he purchased it from him. He renamed the mill to Beaver Mills after the creek that it sits on. The village of Bondsville coalesced. You had the workers' housing, the company store, the schoolhouse that supported the community. And he manufactured Kentucky jeans, cashmere, beaver cloth, buckskin jeans. And these jeans were name brand jeans of the day. So, you know, they were a pretty big deal. And the Whitmere Atlas and the Brios Atlas identify it as James C. Roberts Estate with woolen factory. And they may even identify it as Beaver Mills as well. He also, during his tenure, which went to the end of the 19th century, added buildings D and E, which added steam power to the mill. So the mill was water powered, and he added steam. I think I may have been missing some slides here. Okay. So in 1870, the water power was estimated at 16 horsepower, and the steam power was estimated at 18 horsepower. He purchased insurance, and this is an insurance map provided by Hexamer, dated 1889. And the great thing about these maps is the information that it provides for the companies that they insure. So here's a close-up. You can see that they talk about what's manufactured, what kind of roof it has, how many employees they have, what kind of materials they're bringing into the mill. They need to have all that information for insurance purposes. So that's why these maps are so valuable. What I find interesting is that they had 74 hands, 28 men, 12 boys, 34 girls. So kids, women, men all work together at the mill. This is a group of employees that worked at the mill in the 1880s during the Roberts ownership. There's also other information available for Roberts ownership from the U.S. Census Industry and Manufacturing Schedules of 1870. And in that census, they indicate that the capital invested was $75,000. It was powered by water, estimated at 16 horsepower, and steam, estimated at 18 horsepower. So that's where those numbers came from. And Roberts had 49 employees who he paid a grand total of $21,500 in the year 1869. That's an average of $438.78 per employee. And then 5 different products were produced in the preceding 12 months. 24,000 pounds of wool for jeans, valued at $13,520. 90,000 pounds of Mingo, valued at $15,300. 40,000 pounds of cotton valued at $10,400, and 41,000 pounds of cotton warp valued at $18,860. So that kind of gives you an idea of the monies that they had to invest in the materials and how much they were paying their employees. And then another note that by 1879, he had 100 people working for him. So he was growing the business throughout his time. These are some stock images of other textile mills that manufactured materials similar to Bondsville. And I threw these in here just to give you a feel for what might have, what manufacturing at the Bondsville mill might have looked like back in the day. And you'll notice they didn't have a whole lot of safety precautions. Kids working in bare feet. This is the spinning room. It was a long room that led up to the mill building. Again, this is a stock photo, but it gives you an idea of the process of putting the material onto spindles for the looms. This is a photograph of the park. This is the mill here, and the reason I pulled this up is because I wanted to show you the locations of the schoolhouse, the workers' housing, and the general store property that had the business community there. So there's the workers' housing. Again, these were all developed during Robert's ownership of the mill. The general store, post office, and the schoolhouse. As I mentioned, he added steam power to the mill. In 1887, he upgraded the power to be more efficient. And these boilers date to that time. If you'll notice, Coatesville is embossed on the framework for the boiler. So the boilers were made right over in Coatesville. Yeah, these are some of the other photographs of the steamworks. We would like to get this cleaned up and tell the story of the steam process for visitors to the park as well. This is the pump room. This came in later, but these pumps were used to pump water up to a water tower above the mill, which then fed water to the mill via gravity. This is the 1873 Whitmer Atlas, and you can see they identify the mill as Beaver Mills here, the Roberts Estate, Beaver Mills, Woolen Factory. What's interesting is that Fisherville, Beaver Valley Mills was right below Beaver Mills. This is the mill here. This is the pond with the dam that fed the mill. And this is the creek. So this is Beaver Creek. This is the raceway that fed water into the back of the mill building, turned the wheel, and then returned it back to the creek. What's interesting is that you have a series of mill races that fed the mills further downstream. So there's another pond that fed the Beaver Valley Mills. And this is the Brios from the Brios Atlas, 1883. Again, Beaver Mills, Woolen Factory. You can see the two ponds. This is the creek. And you can see the mill races here and Beaver Valley Mills down here. And this is a shot of Beaver Valley Mills to the south of Bondsville Mill. And you can see that the hills are clear cut. And that was a textile mill as well, a very substantial mill, but is no longer there, completely gone. Did not operate as long as Bondsville. So in the 1890s, there were hard times. The creek level was not sufficient to power the mill. And even though the buckskin jeans were among the most popular on the market at the time, transportation costs were a hindrance to profitability. And so it was a rough time in the 1890s, and a patent trading company ran it for a while and built Section F, the monitor roof. And then in 1906, Patton pulled out and sold off his machinery. So these were lean times around the turn of the century, around the turn of the 20th century. And then in 1906, Fred Pearson came in and purchased the property and manufactured plush and was known as the plush manufacturer. And he was another significant operator of the mill. So you had Bondsville who established it. Roberts was a very big factor in development of the mill. And Fred Pearson is the next big name. As part of his development, he added a masonry building at the very beginning of the 20th century that's labeled as Building H. And I thought I had a layout slide in here. Oh, here it is. All right, to give you an idea, this is the layout of the mill as it was when the township purchased it. And sections A, B, and C are the spinning room and the mill buildings dating back to the 1840s to 1880s. This was the monitor roof section that was installed by Pearson. And he also built section H, which was basically a building that almost butted up against these buildings. It was a huge masonry building that was built in the 1900s. This was added later. But I wanted to give you an idea of the layout here. So you had the water power in the mill building here, and then these are the steam works that were added by Roberts. Okay, so Pearson added the building H, and he expanded the mill owner's house. The mill owner's house had been there since the grist mill, and it started out as a log cabin. Well, he expanded it into a mansion. It sits up on the hill above the mill. And this photograph was taken in 1985, but you can see a significantly large mansion. The Stone family purchased the property in 2012 and is renovating the house. This is what they had to do to it. They basically had to gut the center out. The end walls remain along with the fireplaces. There's 4 fireplaces in each of these walls that feed up into these huge chimneys. And this is what it was 2 or 3 years ago. And he's much further along than that now. It's almost finished. Then in 1927, Collins and Aikman Corporation purchased the mill, and he operated it until 1954. He built the building G that was in the southeast corner that I showed you in that layout. And he produced cloth for the auto upholstery for the Fisher Body Works. That was his main customer, but he also made several other products, including Cavell velvets, Candalon woven nylons, mohair frieze, and foam rubber backing for carpeting and linings for the Air Force Eisenhower jackets. The mill supported the war, just about all the war efforts of the United States. So they were a pretty big deal. And after the war, they erected a war memorial to recognize the service of their employees to the country. And in the mid-1950s, he relocated south, primarily for economic reasons. And unfortunately, he pulled all the equipment out of there. So if you can imagine in Building G, there were 64 Dobby looms. And this is the building that was at the southeast corner of the mill complex. You can see how large the room is. There were 64 Dobby looms in there. And I'm going to show you a stock image of the loom room. to give you an idea of what might have been, what it might have looked like. This is an aerial photograph of the mill in 1937. You can see the workers' housing here, the general store building here, and then just off the map is the schoolhouse. But there was also workers' housing in what is currently the parking lot today. And if you visit the park, you'll see the tops of the foundation walls exposed in the parking lot as it currently exists. So you can kind of get an idea of the layout. I don't know if that's going to remain. We're in the process of redoing the parking lot after the Hurricane Ida excitement. This is a photo of the mill looking at it from Bondsville Road in 1841. These buildings here are on the road side of the creek. The creek is between this building and this building. This is building H here, and building G is over here. Common design of the day was to put these clear stories in. And the nice feature of those clear stories is that they provide ventilation and light. Oh, and the water tower there. This is another photograph of the same thing, basically. But you can see the water tower up on the hill. Again, the water in the 20th century was pumped up to the water tower and gravity fed the mill. Collins and Aikman was a pretty big deal. They had over 300 employees. They had 3 shifts around the clock. And this is one of their annual banquets to give you an idea of the volume of people that work there. This is the War Memorial. This is what was a Eagle Scout project. Was refurbished by an Eagle Scout. We've had several other Eagle Scout projects in the park. There were benches put up on the hill behind the mill by my son. There was some clearing work, the trail building work, and we've had Girl Scout projects at the mill. So we've had some good support in that way. The mill recognized all the employees that served, and then the several employees that actually gave the full devotion to their country, which is basically they died in the war. But it was a nice recognition. It was installed in 1846 or 1946, so right after the war. Another shot of the mill in 1958. And still in 1958, you can see most of the area around the mill is still farmland. In 1960, the Castro Realty Group purchased the mill, and they produced chairs and Davenport couches for sofa beds. And in 1965, they used it for warehousing. So this was really the last of the manufacturing at the mill site. And then it was abandoned until 2004, when the township purchased it to create the park. And the idea was to create a passive natural park with trails and have the mill there as the historical component. The township added an additional 22 acres to increase the park size to 47 acres in 2012. And in 2014, the park opened to the public. Significantly, we currently have an application into the PHMC for listing of the Bondsville Mill, or the Bondsville Historic District. And that is the entire community around the mill. Here's the mill, and all of the yellow numbers are contributing resources to the Bondsville Historic District. And one of the benefits of getting determination of eligibility for listing is that it makes Keystone grants available to us from the state. But importantly, and the reason it's considered significant enough for listing is that it is one of the most intact, complete mill villages in Chester County. So that all these buildings of the period still exist along with the mill is significant. It's one of the few. So we're waiting to hear the results of that application. One of the things in the park development is, yes, the township purchased the park, and the township's been good about using grants and financial support where they can get it for the purchase of the park, for development of the park grounds and whatnot. And they've been good about supplying materials for the renovation work. But what's remarkable about the development of the park is the dedication of the volunteer corps that has driven the project. I mean, that's really what's driven this and has made it happen. And the corps includes the skilled volunteers we need for the building rehabilitation work and development of the grounds and the gardens. So we've utilized grants where we can. The township has supplied material for the building rehabilitation, and we've been very lucky to have our volunteer corps with the skills necessary to do almost all the labor for the park development. I mentioned the Keystone grants because there's very little money out there to support historic resource rehabilitation. There's money out there for green space and that kind of thing, but very little out there for building rehabilitation. That's why we're keen to get access to being able to apply for Keystone grant to support that. So the next few photos I'm going to show you is the condition of the mill in around 2007, and basically what we started with. This is building H here, just on the other side of the bridge from the road. There's building 7, or building, the mill building, looking through the ruins of building H. You can see that the walls were still standing of H, but the roof had completely collapsed. Condition of the spinning room with section A. And this is the spinning room, what we call building A, before renovation work had started. And our volunteers. These doors were all handmade. The wrought iron hinges were handmade. The windows, the double sashed windows, were all handmade at the park out of mahogany. Cedar shingle roofs were installed. We had some key people here on the roof. We got Rocky Stone, who is leading the construction effort, and Arn Jensen and Ian Plain, who not only helped with the construction, but was the lead in developing trails until he moved away. And this is Charlie Lindsay, who currently heads up our trail effort. And this is the finished product. Now we have it completely enclosed. We have heat in the building, and we have used it for events. This is the mill building, section C, and the spinning room continued all the way up to the mill building here. Unfortunately, this portion of it was in such ruins that we're going to leave standing walls and just stay with the rehabilitation of this end of the building. We are currently working on the mill building, which is a 3-story building. And this was the condition prior to rehabilitation work. And you can see that basically just the walls are left standing there. And they had to reframe the entire interior. Happy workers. And we now have a wood shingle roof on this building as well. And that's what it looks like today. And you can see we have windows across the entire front, double sash, hand-built mahogany windows. This was a condition of building F at the northeast end of the site. This was built by Pearson. Just beautiful construction. They had hoped to save this, rehabilitate the entire thing, but they got in there and the lumber was fairly rotten. So what they did was they rebuilt a small section of it just to show what had been. This is now enclosed for storage. We have doors across there. And the mill race, this is where the water came down and fed into the mill here. Went under this bridge, under the walkway behind the mill buildings. It fed into the mill, and this is below the floors of the mill building. And the water wheel was right in here somewhere at one point. But this is where the tail race starts, the water that goes back to the creek. And it is underground from here on out to the creek. We had the benefit of having Dan Campbell come out from Spoon to talk to us about what we were finding below the floor of the mill building. These discs were the hubs for the water wheel. And you can see the trace of the tail race that went back out to Beaver Creek. So we have the mill building at this end and Beaver Creek at this end. And you can see that it is completely underground all the way up to the creek. And it was that way back in Robert's time as well. What's interesting is that they used cut stone slabs to cap the mill. These are masonry mill races, and there were stone slabs cut and placed across the top of the race all the way to the creek. Looking back at the mill building, and you can see again, there's one of the stone slabs. So quite a bit of work done by the construction volunteers to get the buildings to where they are now. And I wanted to talk to you about some of the other components of the park other than just the historical. So again, here's the mill site and the associated historic buildings associated with Bondsville Mill. The park is 47 acres in size, and we have 2 miles of trail in the park. They're beautiful, well-marked trails. And I'm just going to flip through these quickly to give you an idea of what the trails look like. A lot of these are down along the southern trail, the Blue Trail. This is at the top of the hill behind the mill buildings. The mill buildings are below this. This was my son's Eagle project. This is the yellow trail, and you can see the leg of the water tower there. The other thing we have besides trails are picnic areas. We have several picnic areas in the park. This is below the parking lot at the entrance. And looking back on that from the mill side of the creek, you can see there's a beautiful bend in the creek here, and the picnic area is situated in there. It's a great place to have lunch and listening to the babbling water. This picnic table is down along the Blue Trail, the Southern Trail, quite a distance down. And Charlie Lindsay built that in place. There he is, one of our happy volunteers. And this is the picnic table out by the War Memorial. We participated in Chester County Day, the fundraiser for Chester County Hospital in 2017. It was a lunch stop, and we got to talk to the people about, visitors about the mill, and people stopped by to have lunch. Again, perfect place to do that. We also participated in Chester County's town tour program in 2018, which the Chester County Historic Preservation Network also sponsors and supports. And our gardens. Our gardens are primarily native species gardens, but we do have some plants in our pollinator garden that are focused on drawing pollinators, supporting pollinators in the park. But the primary theme of the gardens is native species. So we want to stay focused on that. But these are some of the flowers in the pollinator garden. And our gardening crew. This is the pollinator garden behind the mill race. The creek is over here. Again, happy volunteers. We have a good time out there. And this is Nancy, who is from Downingtown Library. She helps out with the gardens, but she also helps to plan and run events for the park with Sandy Moser. And there's Sandy Moser. She heads up our gardening group and is very involved in planning events and running events for the park. And that's Beth. She is the knowledge behind the gardens right now in the park. And she is a boundless energy. This is the butterfly garden out by the parking lot. The creek is here, the mill is over here. The focus of this garden is on milkweed to support monarch butterflies. We had the volunteers had gone out there to install this garden with the intention of planting milkweed, and lo and behold, stumbled across milkweed. So that was serendipitous. And again, support the pollinators. These photos were all taken at the park. Beautiful chrysalises of the monarch butterfly. And there's a big effort by the volunteers to protect the caterpillars and let them emerge as butterflies. A remarkable variety of butterflies at the park. And some of the events. We've had quite a few events at the park before COVID hit. Unfortunately, COVID has slowed us down a little bit. We don't have events inside right now, but we have been holding them outside, and hopefully we'll be getting back to doing something using the spinning room. So this is the interior of the spinning room as it is now. Actually, it's been improved more than that. There's actually siding up in the walls now, and a library has been installed focused on nature. So providing information about nature in the area of the park. And first day walk, we have had first day hikes, the first of the year for several years in a row now. And you can see this is the water tower trail, the yellow trail. The trails are well blazed. You see the water tower up at the top of the hill. This is one of our butterfly releases. There's Sandy, who really is the focus of running that as well. And we tag the third generation of butterflies just at the end of the season before they leave and migrate to the south again. So we are a Monarch Watch station. We're certified, and and Sandy and her crew tag the butterflies before they're released. And what's cool is that the kids get to hold the butterflies before they fly off. So I'm sure some lifelong memories for them. Some brownies at the park during one of our events. This was an event focused on trees at the park. So they got to go around and scavenger hunt things that came from the trees, leaves, seed pods, and the like. And there's information about each of the trees. A birding event. We had feeders out to attract birds, and this was a very cold day, I believe in January, and we had a remarkable number of birds identified there. And Camera Club, Chester County Camera Club has been out to take photographs, and we even had a movie that used the park as one of their settings. Some shot at the park. Some of the other things. We've had events on the winter solstice, which is kind of a holiday type event. We've had an Earth Day event, and of course, several butterflies and bee events. So the third component, so we have the historical component, we have the natural component with the trails and the gardens with the native species plants and pollinators. And we have our current project, which is development of that large area in front of the mill buildings. We obtained grants from the state and the county to support this. The concrete pad has been ripped out of here, and we're going to install a garden focused on native species, sustainability being the theme, and low maintenance. So this is a teaching tool that's a hot button topic right now, and along with Gardens is enthused about it, and the horticultural community is getting involved, and of the county is getting involved. And the leader of this effort, this design effort, is David Culp. He's an internationally renowned plantsman, and so we couldn't have a better person leading this effort. And in recognition of that, this is going to be called Culp's Clearing. So this is where the concrete pad was. There was buildings G and the collapsed building H. All of this debris has been removed to create that open concrete pad here. And this concrete has since been removed, and we're going to install soils engineered to support the gardens that we're putting in, hardscape and utilities, water lines, and electric. So we envision that this will be used for craft festivals, music, activities like that, and just for people to come out and sit in a natural setting and enjoy the backdrop of the mill buildings. This rendering was done from that perspective by Kai Peterson of what the gardens may look like when they're finished. This is from the southeast corner, the other corner of the pad, and this was a rendering done by Adrian Martinez, again, a nationally recognized artist who lives in Downingtown. Oh, I forgot to mention David Culp lives right in our township, in East Brandywine Township. So Adrian Martinez lives in Downingtown, and he's participating. Here is the horticultural crew leading the garden design effort. There's David Culp, there's Sandy, it's Kai Peterson and Adrian Martinez, just to name a few of them. So these are international and regional leaders in the horticultural community. So it should be a terrific end product. We hired a contractor. Right, here's some photos of the High Line to give you an idea of the kind of plants that we're likely to have in this garden. David Culp was very involved in the High Line up in New York City as well. They used an elevated line, abandoned elevated line to create a walkway above the streets and gardens along the walkway. So this is actually elevated above the streets in New York City, if you haven't heard of it. But this gives you a feel for historic buildings and gardens in front of it, what it may look like. We used a contractor to remove the concrete, and our volunteers are doing all of the work for the garden preparation, and we'll be installing the engineered soils that we're purchasing, and the utility lines, the water and the electric, and we're paying to have the well installed as well. And then the plants will be ordered, and then the installation will be all labor. So an important component of the design is this parking lot, which is the fourth phase of the project. So we've removed the concrete pad. We're currently laying the hardscape pathways and the utility lines, and then we'll bring in the soils, and then the gardening volunteers will install the plants, and the parking lot, which will handle about 60 cars, will be installed to feed the additional volume we have here. This is a very limited parking lot. This is going to be key to the future of the park. So I encourage you to visit the Mills page on the township website, and the park also has a website, Bondsville Mill Park, all one word, .org. And both of these pages have links to the East Brandywine Foundation. That was a foundation set up by the township to accept donations, tax-free donations. And it's a 501c3. So if you're of the mindset of wanting to contribute to the effort, I encourage you to do so. If you think you have a skill set and would like to participate in the volunteer work, there's contact information on those sites as well. The reason I brought up the full, beyond the historical component of the park, the other components is I wanted to point out that this is a very unique part of the county, and people are going to be coming to this park for a variety of reasons. And what's terrific about this is those that are coming to the park for the gardens or to walk the trails are being exposed to history. So I think that's important in whatever we do, is to create venues where there's an opportunity to expose visitors to local history and get them interested in it, and hopefully in the long run get their support. So, all right, that's all I have. So I imagine we're going to go into a question and answer. Kathleen?
Jim, I have to commend you on the outstanding presentation. What a fascinating overview of Bondsville Mill in the park. As I was listening, one of the things that I was struck with was the cadre of dedicated volunteers you have working on this project. And I'm curious as to what serious challenges they have encountered in the rehab process that stand out in your mind.
I can't really say. I mean, other than I'm astounded. If we had considered that we were going even where we are today, when we were looking at the site in 2007, you look at some of those pictures, the thought of this, the condition of the site today would have been overwhelming. And what amazes me is the steady, every day, every week, steady progress that is made by the volunteers. So as far as roadblocks or difficulties, I'm not sure if I can identify any other than perhaps funding. We've been very lucky to have support of the township for the materials for the rehabilitation work, recognizing that we have a poor volunteers that have the skill set to actually do the labor work. So quite a bit of donated time to the project by them.
Fascinating. Jim, also during your presentation, you showed a map of the mill, and one of the rooms was indicated as a monitor room. What happened in the monitor room?
This, again, was the layout from the time that Collins Aikman ran the mill. This was the layout when the township took receipt of it. And monitor, again, is that style of building that has the roof line that's elevated for windows for ventilation and light. So both of these had monitor sections to them. There is a accounting of the process in the time of Collins and Aikman. I have here. A typical day at the mill in the 20th century, based on the memory of Jack Williams. He was a township resident and worked at the mill in the 1950s and was interviewed in 2006. Trucks delivered raw materials. And they were brought into section H here, and then they rotated through the mill in a counterclockwise manner. So the raw materials were brought in over the main bridge into section H. They were uploaded through the large door at the southwest corner of the complex. And material was placed along sidewalls to await the next available loom. As the material was completed on a particular loom, and again, this was building G, where we had the 64 Dobby looms. So raw material was brought in through here, processed and brought into the looms. And once the production was complete, the material was moved into the monitor section. Again, that's section F. And it was called the mending room. That's where they inspected the materials for defects and made repairs and mended the material. And then it passed inspection. It was then moved to the storage on the first floors of the spinning room and the mill building, and then delivery trucks, which were located in the upper level of the mill building, overlooking the mill complex. The offices, I'm sorry. Trucks were, which unloaded the raw materials, then loaded the finished material to be trucked to its next destination. So the trucks would come in, deliver the raw material, would be processed in a counterclockwise manner, and the trucks would take the finished material and off to shipping. Offices at the time were on the upper floors of the mill building here in section C. So that's a long answer.
But it's a good answer, very informative. The next question is, what was the fuel that was used during the steam period for the steam plant, and how did it get delivered?
Coal. And I would assume it was delivered by trucks, because there were no rail lines immediately near the mill.
Jim, if somebody wants to visit the park, what are the hours? And is there any fee to enjoy the beautiful surroundings of that historic property?
As I mentioned, it's owned by the township, so it's a municipal park. The hours are basically dawn to dusk. It's closed once the sun hits the horizon at the end of the day, and not open again until it comes back up. It's free. It's the trails are well marked. They're beautiful trails, and we have signage up regarding the history of the mill. For example, that Hexamer insurance map is posted over by the in this area of the mill. So we have signs up to talk about the history of the mill. It's well marked trails and beautiful gardens. And as I pointed out, if you take the time to be in the gardens at the time the pollinators are there. You'll see a remarkable variety. Sandy's done an excellent job of planting the garden to attract that variety.
So with that, Jim, I would like to extend to all the attendees tonight a very special thank you for coming in and enjoying this fascinating history of Bondsville Mill. Special thanks to you, Jim, for this presentation. We look forward to seeing our attendees next month on November 18th, which of course is the third Thursday, live at 5, when we discover mid-century modernism in Middle Pickering. Details and registration information are available on our cchpn.org website. We wish all of you a great evening, and we hope to see you next month. Good night.